Hello everyone, this is Devin from Devin's Trees. I'd like to briefly talk with you about bush-shaped trees, some reasons why I really like them, and something that I've been working on for the coming season, a plan, because it's very good to have a plan for what you want to see in a tree that you're growing and training for next season. This tree here, it's an LSU purple. If you watched my last video, you would have seen that this tree was mentioned because in cold storage it was just starting to push out the little tiny buds. These buds have now started to leaf out. This tree I bought last fall. It was a year and a half old and rather congested. I believe that because of the way these move apart, it was actually originally two cuttings grown in the same pot. For that reason, I've left a lot of this mess, and I'm going to let it do its own thing this year. And then next year, depending on how it grows, I'm either going to cut it into two plants and separate those roots, just slice right through it. If it's got a solid enough root structure, it'll survive it just fine if you do it when it's dormant. And then I'll have this, a very nice, well-shaped bush tree on the way, and this, another one that may need to lose one of its branches, depending on how it grows. If I keep it in one pot, then I'll take out, say, this branch because it's crossing a lot of the smaller branches, and then narrow down to 3 to 5 really good scaffold branches to start my tree. So I haven't decided how I want to approach this. That will depend on how it grows this season, and if I really think that I can get two very nice trees out of the one by cutting it, then I will do that. One thing I want to mention, I already removed some of them, is when you have these buds, this one was one I rubbed off, and they're facing the center. You can see there's quite a few that I already rubbed off in a previous take. You don't want that. I've left a few of these because I may separate it later, so I'm going to let them do their own thing. If I don't separate it, then I'm going to have to prune those back. But what you really want is you want the buds to be reaching to the outside. That allows your tree to spread outward and leave your center open for airflow, because you don't want it to come back in and cross and get congested. I've seen some people say you can get as many as 7 branches on a bush. I think it depends on how closely spaced they are and whether or not they can grow and continue to grow as they get older without really rubbing against each other and causing further problems with the tree. To remove these little guys, it's really quite simple. I've got one here. You just take and you just rub it right off. Sometimes they will grow back, and if you really don't want it, you just keep rubbing. Most of the time, though, it's not going to grow back for this season. It's pretty common practice to rub off buds, because you don't want every single node to push growth all the time. Whereas like here you had 5 nodes at the end of the branch. You don't really want 5 branches coming out of there because they're so close together that you're going to have this weird knot of wood coming out. So that's kind of a little summary, a little synopsis of what's going on with my LSU purple. It was the first to wake up. Since then I have probably half a dozen others that are now waking up. This one here, it's a Madeleine de deux Saisons. I ended up shipping it in cold. It was dormant, but it wasn't optimal temperatures or protected. I wasn't sure if it was going to come back. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 at the base, and 5 that have come up. So these 2 branches do have several nodes each, 2 to 3. They may come back, they may not. If this one doesn't, I won't be heartbroken because I have this little guy here that I can give its place to. So it all depends on how that works out for this season. Going forward, it already has a fairly nice bush shape, and then I'll just be working to turn these into central leaders. Once they turn about 5 leaves, I'm going to pinch them back just to make sure that I encourage that branching. When you pinch the leaf bud off, what you're actually doing is you're taking all that potential energy and redirecting it to the following 3 leaf buds or leaf nodes on virtually any type of tree as far as I know. And so it's directing that growth into branching because that energy was waiting to be released and now you've dammed it up, so it has to go somewhere. So it goes to the leaf nodes below it, the preceding three. This one here, I haven't really trained it much, actually. Haven't done anything in terms of training with it. It's my Oblique Petite. It's coming up on its 3rd season this year. I do have a Brava bud there, first crop fig. Excited about that. This one, it's doing exactly what I want. Every single leaf node is actually pushing a bud, and they're going in different directions, so I'm going to get a very full spreading look that's going to really fill out my pot. This one is budding at the end. This one here has one bud, but I'm hoping if it grows and I pinch that back, I'm going to end up filling this space here. So all in all, this tree is doing very well. It was a branch tip and actually did all this all on its own, which I'm very happy with. Some figs tend to bush more than others. This one actually came up late last fall, and it's, as you can see, the darker part, it died back. The tip did when it got a mild frost, and in cold storage it grew that 1.5 inch little thing with a leaf. If it keeps going and goes straight, it's going to compete with this for light, and it's going to mess up my shape of my tree, so I'm going to end up air layering it or taking it for cuttings. If it doesn't keep going and actually expands out, or by clipping it back, convince it to push outwards, and it fills a needed space here, then I may allow it to go out. It all depends on what these buds do and how that grows. So that is an option, but most likely I will not be keeping that small one. I really prefer a bush-shaped tree as a lower center of gravity. You're going to end up with a tree that is producing a lot on the lower part of the tree. What I don't like is when you have a really tall tree that's got nothing. Like this one here, it's 4 feet. It's got most of the tiny branching at the top. It's what you would call a feathered whip. If it doesn't branch sufficiently at the bottom, what I'm going to do next year, it's in a 7-gallon pot now, is I'm going to cut it back and leave probably 5 or 6 leaf nodes at the bottom. And then I'm going to let it branch out from those and try and convince it to have more of a bush shape. But we will see what that brings with the new season. I know some people like having a tall tree that makes a huge canopy and is going to grow, and then make this gorgeous canopy. But for a potted tree, it doesn't make a lot of sense. You're not going to allow your tree to get 10 feet tall. You're going to maintain it at 4 to 6 feet at the most. So you really want to have a lot of branch potential down low, so that way you get a lot of main crop from the new growth, and you maybe even get a lot of brava, depending on the variety, from the old growth. Because even though they form on the new tips, a lot of times they will form on the tips, on the branch sections of the older wood. So for maintenance in a pot, for ease of care, you really are more, it's in your best interest to have something with a low center of gravity and a lot of branching, so you can really fill that space and you're not left with 3 feet, 4 feet of dead space on